The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome back to The Young American. I am your host, Joseph Bemister. We are live from the Studio 21 Podcast Café. Find us on iHeartRadio, Podbeam, Podcast app, United Podcast Network, and YouTube Live. This podcast is fully fact-based about our politics. It's also opinionated about our government, laws, the officials, and how we feel the government is changing in a good and bad direction through my libertarian views and the point of view of my guest. Welcome back. This is Chief Petty Officer Mark, the Navy, for a while, 20 years.
It's good to be back with the kid Constitution.
I didn't think you were going to throw that in there. I thought that was the voice of God's thing.
I like it.
But today we're going to be talking about the tax benefits of legalizing marijuana, Trump's wall, and him calling in the Guard to kind of protect our border until he has that wall fully constructed, and also how it's going to affect the ecosystem, specifically the Ocelot population down there, and my view on that, which I don't really have a huge opinion on that, but I do think it's important to kind of conserve any animal, especially of an endangered species in that area. All right, so we're going to jump right into the tax benefits of legalizing marijuana. The state of California said 2015 they have an estimated $1.2 billion in tax revenue added just of the legalization and taxation of marijuana. What do you think would New Hampshire specifically would benefit, or the rest of the United States would benefit from that?
Well, I think, it's definitely an idea. If you're going to legalize marijuana, I definitely think that taxation is the right thing to do, just because of the cost that legalizing marijuana will bring up, with enforcement of the laws and codes. The health, there is some health risk there. People are smoking something in their lungs. There is some health risk there. And so I'm not opposed to it at all. And I think, if it will be legalized, then I'm for, some sort of reasonable tax.
Yeah. I mean, as Mr. Jonathan said earlier, he's not with any taxes, as am I. But if there's a way to get our government out of debt, I think this would be one of the bigger ways, because there's so many people who illegally use marijuana and legally in some states that get taxed. And if you see these states, their infrastructure has been getting better because they have the tax revenue and money in the budget now to fix up their states. And I think on a federal level that we'd benefit from that.
Can you think of a single state that uses its tax dollars to, actually fix the roads in a timely fashion?
Definitely not New Hampshire.
Make the roads last so that we're getting the most value we can out of our dollar.
Well, there's the problem with government there. If we privatized everything, I think that we'd do a lot better, because they're not getting a paycheck from the government, and it's not like, I need more money. They can't. I think a privatized company that would look at it through the government, they aren't just going to say, we need more money. We said this, and now we need actually this, like the government's kind of system does, their public way to fix everything. Like in town here, they have the water system, the water department here, and right in front of one of our properties in Salem, it broke, and it took a while for them to get it fixed, but they fixed it, and it was the road was really weird after that. It took a while to do.
I'm not a fan of giving the U.S. or local governments any more money to waste for any reason ever. If they want to legalize marijuana because there's a benefit to legalizing marijuana, do it.
It's true.
But not for taxing purposes.
I think the only way they're going to legalize it is for the tax purpose. I don't think they're going to. It's a Schedule I drug right now. It's up.
Controlled substance.
Yeah, controlled substance. It's up there above like cocaine and certain opioids, and kind of go off course. But when you get a medical marijuana card in different states, the federal government takes your Second Amendment right away. But when you get prescribed opioids, they don't. Which is that's.
I did not know that.
Very weird. Yeah. And there's actually health benefits to marijuana besides pain relief. It's an anti-anxiety med, it's antidepressant. I mean, you can use it for anti-inflammatory, and opioids you can do the same thing, but there's no mental benefit to that.
Well, I think in the case of, I certainly don't want to advocate people smoking, or I should say inhaling, because I smoke cigars. I don't inhale cigars. Yep. I don't want bringing more inhalation of smoke products to the people. I don't want Marlboro cigarettes getting involved with it. So it is a little bit of a slippery slope, because if marijuana becomes legal, the people with all the money, Altria, who owns Marlboro, is going to get involved, and now you're going to be dealing with the potential of creating an addiction on a product that isn't addictive to begin with.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what they've done with cigarettes. They put additives in there and chemicals, and they actually have broken into the marijuana market in California and Colorado. They have Marlboro marijuana cigarettes in a little green package, got the green cross on it.
You know an awful lot about this, Joseph.
Yeah, I have friends from California on Facebook, and they're posting pictures of it. Like, I didn't think this was real, blah, blah, blah. That, and it's more than just smoke too. I mean, you can get into the edibles, you can get into essential oils with marijuana, you can get into everything. You can do whatever you want to, and it's not even just something you smoke or use to as a medical benefit. You can use it as a hand cream, you can use it as like a building blocks, fibers, whatever. You can almost use that plant for everything.
Yeah, basically you take the THC out of it, and you can get all the benefits out of the CBT oils.
Yep, CBD. Yeah.
CBD, sorry, and get rid of the high portion of it. And if that was the case, I'd be all for it, because you can't test somebody that's high on marijuana if they're behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah,
there isn't a live test like a breathalyzer for alcohol. You can't test to see if somebody is high or not.
So they have a swab system in Colorado. They swab the inside of your mouth, and they can check when's the last time there was marijuana smoke in your mouth. If it stays on your taste bud. What
if you ate a gummy bear?
Same thing. It's THC oils. That's actually what marijuana smoke has. It's vapored oils, and that's why you actually get high.
What if you used a suppository? I'm not trying to be gross. I'm just saying
you're
not swabbing someone's backside to see if they're high.
That's true. I mean, you could do that with different types of drugs too. I mean, opioids. There's ways to see. There's physical ways to see that people are still prosecuted in, but you can't really do it with marijuana and alcohol. You can actually get a test, but there are certain drugs out there you can't be tested for at the moment, and they still find out.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, to go to the legalization of marijuana, that's why I think we should keep it at the state level. I mean, I think our whole country, federal government needs to move back towards states having their own, and that's kind of how it is now. So, we mentioned earlier federal tax money, but I think federal government should stay away from this one and let the states make their decisions, because
we've taken the 10th Amendment, which I believe I can't cite it because I was looking for my bag. I thought I brought it up with my Constitution, and it says the right to reserve powers leave to the state. That isn't in the Constitution. So whatever's not wrote in the Constitution, that the states have the right to reserve the powers to, and I think marijuana does absolutely fall into that. There's only 3 laws in the Constitution, and it's treason, piracy, and counterfeiting, and other than that, the state governments have the right to make whatever laws they want and they feel is necessary.
Which is where the Supreme Court would come in, and you could argue that something should fall under the purview of one of those statutes in the Constitution.
Yeah.
And that's one of our checks and balances in the country.
Yep. Well, one of the many we have. Our government was designed to barely function. I've been learning that in my law class. A lot of people say, our government barely functions. Well, that's absolutely true. It's designed to be that way. We were designed to follow the Constitution only, and whatever the states want. Other than that, the federal government shouldn't be able to easily make new laws. A lot of people complain about that, but they've had a lot more power in the past under the Bush and Obama administration. I think now that there's less bipartisanship, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but looking at it in a standpoint, they're not pushing the laws that they want that are unnecessary and causing us, to pay more taxes and pushing, through the House and the Congress and then back to the judicial executives and all that fun stuff. It's a good thing.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Yep. You have anything else on that, Mark?
No.
Alrighty. We'll move on to Trump, his wall, and the Guard. The wall it started last month in San Diego, and it's going to be built across the United States and in different parts at different times. The most I believe they call the vulnerable areas are going to be built first, and that's affecting the Ocelot population. And also, he called in the National Guard to protect the border. You were in the military, so what's your thought on him calling in the National Guard?
Yeah, I think President Trump is using this as a negotiating tool. Like we've seen, he's a great negotiator, and a lot of times, he's playing chess and others are playing checkers, and I think this is one of them. He's posturing to try to get immigration reform, but it's been done before, right? I mean, you've seen in the news that Clinton did it, Bush did it, Obama did it. They've all done it, but it seems, of course, when Trump does it, it seems to take on a whole different level of escalation. But I think that's a temporary fix. But, it just blows my mind. We get into this thing. Is it a wall? Isn't it a wall? It's a fence, and, the liberals don't want to give it to President Trump that it's a wall.
Yep.
But, who's against securing our southern border to ensure we know what's coming and going from our country? What is a country without borders? Is it a country at all?
No.
We got to have security. We got to have checks and balances of people coming in here. And it just blows my mind why anyone would think different and wouldn't want to have, some kind of control. Call it what you want, a fence, a wall, a barrier, the Rio Grande, something that you keep people from just coming and going freely.
Exactly. And I don't believe in using overspending on what we have now. I think our budget should be cut, but I do believe that the border is something that is so essential to us because we've been attacked time and time again. Biggest it being 9/11, and then recently we had the Boston bombing and these shootings that have been claimed by different terrorist organizations. We're the most hated country in the world, to put it bluntly. People want to hurt us, and if there's an easy way to get in, whether it be through Canada or Mexico, they're going to find a way in. And I think securing our border is one of the top priorities right now.
Yeah, and all these other things that we want to do with immigration, you really can't effectively do right until you stop the bleeding, which is at the border, right? If you want to control immigration, DACA, all these other things that we want to do, until you have a control point where you have an idea of who's coming in and the numbers that we're talking about, it's useless, right?
If I'm not mistaken, Canada is not all that difficult just to go to from foreign countries. They're pretty particular about who they just let in.
Yeah.
So the northern border is of less concern to me than the southern border, where you have countries like Mexico where you can, and I was talking to a friend of mine, Ed, he went to Cuba illegally in the 80s,
Yep.
and he said to the Mexican guy at the border, I don't want you to stamp my passport. And the guy said, I'm going to need some documents of persuasion, I believe is the term. So he gave him $20, and he didn't stamp his passport, because back then the way you got caught going to a place like Cuba is they would see 2 stamps of entry into Mexico and no stamp of exit.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So you'd see that, okay, you came into Mexico twice. How is that even possible?
Exactly.
So you tip the guy at the border and say, I'd like you not to stamp my passport. He puts his hand out. You give him $20. He doesn't stamp your passport. This doesn't happen in Canada.
No, not at all.
You say to the guy, I don't want you to stamp my passport. He says, that's fine. You don't have to come in the country. Now, if somebody wanted to go north of Canada and try to come in through those ice fields and they can make it through, they deserve to cause whatever terror they're going to cause, as far as I'm concerned. They've earned it at that point.
I mean, I forget, I was it's a while ago in 7th grade, we learned about the Ottoman Empire attacking Rome, and what they did was they had elephants and thousands and hundreds of thousands of troops. They tracked through, I believe it was Spain. There was a channel of Spain. I think it's 6 miles long from Africa to Spain. They sailed across there, and they trekked all the way through the Alps in France in the wintertime, even with the elephants. And then they went down to the Roman Empire, and that was when the Roman Empire started to fall. They saw the first big attack that way. They came through Gaul, which was France then, and now I think there is how do we put it, vulnerability through Canada, but I think we have so many defense systems, and Canada does as well, that no one's coming through.
I'm not saying no one, but you really have to pick which one is more dangerous. So you got $20 billion you're going to spend and put up a structure.
That's
Are you
true.
going to block Canadians from coming through the woods?
The snow Mexicans.
Or are you going to put it on the Mexican border and stop literally anyone in the country from just walking over the border into the United States?
In Canada, I think the difference between Canada and the United States is that they guard their border just as much as we do. So they're just as worried. Yeah, they're just as worried as us getting in as we're worried about them coming in. So I think there's a kind of a dual partyship there, where both countries are like, all right, well, we don't want you coming in, and we don't want you guys coming in, so we're just going to put a bunch of drones up there, and we're going to see who's trying to get where, and we're going to have Border Patrol. I mean, in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, my brother went snowmobiling up there with my dad. They saw Border Patrol agents patrolling. I mean, they're up there. They're definitely made a presence everywhere along the border. They have to.
When I was a kid, we used to go to Canada, and it was at the time the statistic was somewhere around 2 to 3 times more likely to have your car disassembled on your way into Canada than you were on the way into the United States. And that's you could get Cuban cigars then, right? So that was the big concern of the U.S. government, is that people are going to smuggle in Cuban cigars.
Yep.
They weren't taking apart your car. The Canadian officials were taking your car apart, though.
Yeah, they were worried about more than just Cuban cigars coming. They were worried about like cocaine in the 80s.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, Miami Vice, you had Pablo Escobar. That was in his prime. He had New York and Miami and all those fun places taken over. So now back to the wall. I mean, the ecosystem around the area, specifically the ocelots, they're trying to figure out how to solve that problem. And I believe it's a problem that needs to be fixed because there's an endangered species, and it's a historical species. It's not very well known, but it's historical species in native cultures down there.
I think there's got to be a way to, secure and build a wall and still care for these animals and ensure they're, that they survive, and, that we're not going to kill off their mating patterns or something.
Is that the concern, that they can't climb over the wall? They live in the United States for some of the time, in Mexico some of the time?
So it's a big area where these ocelots go from, and they're going back and forth on a daily basis, and if they create this wall, it's going to disturb the whole ecosystem around. They don't know if it's going to be quite sure if the whole species will die off or just the ecosystem will be completely disrupted. We'll see different types of birds becoming more common, different types of rodents and small animals become more common in different areas because there's less or there's more.
Sounds like a bunch of liberal crap to me. I think
I was just thinking the same thing.
You put up a fence in your yard, and you don't change the ecosystem.
No.
Things don't die. And even if you make your yard completely impervious to deer, and you grow tomatoes, the deer are not going to die. They'll just go eat someplace else. The ocelots are going to go someplace else.
Adapt. Animals are very adaptive.
Exactly. They're going to come up to the wall, and they're going to go right or left and find another person to mate with, and all will be well in Whoville.
Yeah. If you saw the pictures of the prototype of the wall as well, there's actually a small area. I believe it's like 6 inches wide, and the ocelot's only like an average of 35 pounds. I was reading. I don't think it's too big to fit through those small holes, to be honest with you.
I think the argument I'm with him, I think is a liberal logic type of argument to stop the wall from being built.
Yeah, they're just trying to throw up some smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I look at it as a different perspective because being a hunter and being a conservationist, it's always nice to protect the whole area and the ecosystem. I mean, when I took hunter safety, they kind of taught us the importance of how it is to protect the animals in the area you're going to hunt. I mean, you could see an influx or a de-escalation. Does it?
De-escalation?
De-escalation. Learning disability.
That's okay.
De-escalation of different types of animals in there.
If you said to me that the wall was going through several nests of ocelots, I don't know if they nest, but if that was the example and it was slated to go directly through several nests, I would say, okay, we need to redirect that. Maybe give 10 feet of land to Mexico or take 10 feet of land away from them.
Yeah.
And, plus or minus, so we're not going through the nests or
no
through the
man's
dens.
zone, a no man's land.
Exactly.
Like, okay, no one gets this. Don't cry about it.
But if short of that, I don't think that the ocelots are in any more danger with a wall there than they are not having a wall. They're going to still get hit by cars, and there's still going to be idiots hunting them that shouldn't.
Yep.
That think
Poachers
it's good eating, whatever. I've never eaten an ocelot. I'm not saying I wouldn't.
It's like a small leopard, so I think they're more concerned about the fur on both sides. That as well, and I do think what you were saying was right. They're kind of throwing up smoke and mirrors to get people to stop with the wall.
It's a cat?
It is a cat, yeah. It's a little cat.
There is no way that the cat is going to have a problem.
No.
I was thinking, I thought.
An ocelot's like a bird or something.
Sloth.
A sloth.
I'm sorry.
A sloth.
I thought you meant it was a form of sloth. I'm sorry.
It's an ocelot.
So it's a cat.
It looks like a mini
There is zero danger that the cat is not going to be able to climb a wall with its claws in nature if it needs to get to the other side.
It's going to be like the new Jurassic Park with those velociraptors.
I wish I wasn't such an idiot and knew more animals.
Well, do you watch Archer? Have you seen Archer?
I have seen Archer.
Remember the ocelot?
I'm not up to date on it.
There's an ocelot. When you get into they explain what an ocelot is. That's actually where I learned it. And
perfect.
It's awesome.
Yeah, you got to worry about poachers more than you have to worry about a wall.
That's true, and I mean, I think the poaching problem in South Africa has become really big. They have an estimated 15 male white-horned rhinos left in the world, and they keep dying because people want to take their ivory.
So to go back to the wall, I'd like to talk the politics of it. One thing that blows my mind too is this whole funding And, the president on the campaign trail said, Mexico's going to pay for it. They're going to pay for it. Well, I don't know if you've seen here a little bit. Everyone's like, when President Trump started calling out China on this trade. I don't know if you saw the news today.
Yep.
They removed their auto tariffs. They cut them way down, because of President Trump's threat. And I think the same thing would happen with the wall, right? We redo NAFTA. We redo our immigration policies, build that wall. And over time, the money that we're going to, that will come back into our coffers from renegotiating these terrible trade deals will help pay for that wall rather quickly.
I never thought that President Trump was going to get Mexico to write us a check for the wall.
Yes.
But we send them billions of dollars in aid every single year. So we could just, if it costs $3 billion to build the wall, you send them $3 billion less, and they've in effect paid for the wall.
That and tourism. I mean, we were just in Mexico a couple months ago, and tourism down there is huge. Most of the people are Americans down there where we were. It was awesome. It was awesome vacation. People go down there all the time. And I think the only place right now where Mexico, we're not allowed to travel is Playa del Carmen. And President Trump, if he wanted to, he could take that away. And I don't know if it's for people in the United States or it's the government officials aren't allowed to go to Playa del Carmen. Did you hear about that?
Well, I don't know, but I have been seeing in the news a lot that Cancun has become kind of a ravaged place. And, my parents back in the 80s and stuff used to go to Acapulco, was a big gathering spot, big resort type town in Mexico. And that turned just into crime and drugs, and it wasn't safe for Americans or tourists.
It just takes a couple of Americans to wake up in a bathtub missing their kidney and, maybe we shouldn't go there for a while.
Right.
No, not even that, just a couple dead Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
It seems like Cancun's become like that of late. You hear these stories and see them on the news all the time. It's
becoming more violence as the corruption grows. In other places, like Mexico has a southern border wall, as we want to build our southern border wall. They protect that more than anything because that's where a lot of the drugs are coming from, not even Mexico itself, but places below Mexico where it gets into. And back to what we were saying kind of about Canada, they're protecting their border just as much as we are. If Mexico wanted to protect their border, I believe it wouldn't need a wall. Like, we don't have a wall in Canada. Certain parts we have border checks in areas we're not allowed to pass through. But if they were doing their part in securing their northern border as we are our southern border, I think we'd be fine. We would just have drones. We'd have small checkpoints. We'd have maybe like a fence or a wall to keep people coming across. But other than that, there's no way we need a wall. That's just the reality of it.
Both of them countries have stricter immigration laws than we do as well.
Oh, yeah. And when they move in here, too, if you get caught in Mexico illegally, I believe it's 2 years in jail. For us, we just send you back.
Or we give you a court date, send you free, and you may not ever have to come back for that court date and live here for 10, 12, 14 years.
Yeah. That's true. You can get released on bail because you have same rights as every other American when you're in here illegally, which you have certain rights as soon as you enter this country, you're granted. But I think if you're an illegal alien or immigrant and you're in here and you get arrested, you shouldn't be released until your court date.
And this brings up another point, too, here last week or a couple weeks ago there. The census, is coming up, and they want to put on there, are you an American citizen? And the liberals were up in arms because we're going to ask on the U.S. Census where we count our population if you're an illegal. And they were like, no, that's illegal to do. Well, hello, it's illegal to be here illegally.
Exactly.
But if we want to ask you on a census so we can count for you, that's infringing somehow on your rights or something. And that just goes to a bigger motive here, I think, behind why they don't want to secure the wall. I'm talking about the left here and why they don't want to know how many illegals actually vote.
Yep.
Because, I think we can all probably agree on which way illegal immigrants are going to vote. And that's a big part of their base, I would imagine. And so that's another power that's working behind the scenes here against the wall and against properly identifying who's here and who's not.
Yeah, and that also comes down to voter ID laws. Although it is a right to vote, if I have to show an ID to buy a firearm because it's also my right, and your counter argument to the voter ID is that it's our right, you're going to need to show ID to vote because we don't want the wrong people getting in the office because of voter fraud, people voting more than once, and just people who shouldn't be in here voting at all. And people are pretty angry about that. I mean, come on, if you can go across state lines and vote more than once and not have to, say who you are, show an ID, that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and then when you got our senatorial vote here in New Hampshire last year was less than 500 votes, I think, is what decided it.
Ooh. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So how hard would it be with a little bit of organization and some money to get 500 people to vote in a few different spots.
Exactly.
And cast a vote to swing.
Just have George Soros rent a couple of buses.
That guy.
Ship them in.
Crazy.
Soros and the Rothschilds, yeah. Yeah, I think I saw, so I don't know if it's true, but I've been seeing that Chelsea Manning is married to George Soros' nephew. And that's why the Clintons have a big tie to Soros. But I didn't know if that's true or not. I haven't kind of put the time in to look into that.
Well, there's always next week's show.
There is always next week's show.
Yeah, that gets me, though. The whole, you need an ID to go buy a six-pack of beer. You need an ID to buy a rifle. You need an ID to...
And it's a privilege, too. Having an ID and being driving is a privilege. And you don't always need a driver's license. Couldn't be an ID. You can get, non-driver's license ID, at least in New Hampshire. And it's a privilege, not a right. And buying a firearm is a right, and you still need to show your ID. You use your privilege to get your rights granted to you. And a lot of people are saying, well, do you not agree with background checks and people being restricted in buying a firearms? I do. I believe, I've always said this, it's not what you can get, it's who gets it. And I'm not opposed at all to have background checks. But if you're going to make me wait to buy what I want, okay, say I've gotten a death threat and I want to go out and buy a handgun because, okay, someone's threatened me, and you want me to wait 2 days, okay, within those 2 days, what am I going to have to protect myself? I'm not going to have anything to protect myself. And there's many instances, such as New Jersey, they have a 2-day waiting period, and I believe they're upping it to 6. And there's many cases where women had found out there was a stalker, and they went to go buy a firearm, and that same day they were either attacked or within the waiting period they were attacked. And that can cause a problem.
You have to start sharpening up some kitchen knives, Joey.
Yeah, what are they going to take those now?
Britain. They are.
I mean, they're taking everything in Britain. The screwdrivers, scissors, box cutters. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, when they start stoning people again, I guess they're going to make sticks and stones illegal.
Yeah, they also have acid attacks. They're going out and buying acid and throwing it on people, which is, okay, it just goes to show their murder rate did actually surpass New York's. And they don't have knives now or any sharp object, and they're not allowed to have firearms. How is their murder rate so high? But cars and clubs and everything else they can use to get their hands on. They can go into a hardware store and they can build a weapon, for God's sake.
It goes back to the basis of the whole argument, right? It's not the weapons that killed people. It's the people that killed people. They're going to find a way. They're going to find a tool, box truck,
anything.
Vehicle.
Anything at all and everything, and it's being used. And that's the problem. I think people don't understand it's more of a mental health issue and kind of associated with, like you see in Mexico, their crime rate is so high, and they're only allowed to have firearms in home, and there's only one store you can actually buy a firearm in Mexico, and it's in Mexico City at the big military base there. And you have to wait. You have to go through a background check, get fingerprinted, photo ID, and then you can take that firearm home, and you're only allowed to keep it on your property. You're not allowed to take it off unless you go into the shooting range. It's pretty interesting. And they started making it a little easier to get firearms in Mexico because so many people were getting fed up with the cartels ruling the places in Mexico. And I watched a documentary on that a couple weeks ago.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, no matter how many laws you make, the bad guys are going to get what they want. They don't listen to laws.
Well, no, they don't follow laws. That's the thing. As always, thank you. We are live from the Studio 21 Podcast Café. Like and subscribe. This helps out a lot if you do. Next week, we'll be talking about the FBI raid of Trump's lawyer, the Massachusetts upholding of the assault weapons ban, and the federal judge that said it wasn't part of the Second Amendment. I don't know if he knows how to read that or not. And one of the oldest gun manufacturers in the United States filed for bankruptcy. How they're going to get out of that, we'll kind of discuss that, and I'm going to look into it more before we talk about that. And anyone out there who is listening, who wants to advertise or sponsor the show, please contact us, and we'll give you more details on how to do so. Thank you, and see you guys next week. Thanks, Mark, for coming on.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.